She mocked at me in front of her friends. "You're useless and can't give me what I deserve." I smirked, paid my own bill and walked out. That night, she showed up crying, but my new girl was there to greet her. It was a Friday night, and the cafe was buzzing with friends laughing, music playing softly in the background. I walked in, spotting her sitting at a corner table with her group of friends. On the surface, she looked calm, smiling and chatting, but I could feel it in the air, tension. That look she gave me was sharp, calculating, the kind that always meant trouble. I slid into my chair, trying to stay casual, sipping my coffee, but I knew she was already preparing her little show. She thrived on attention, especially in front of her friends. The tension was almost electric, like the calm before a storm. Then she snapped. Her voice rang out, cutting through the cafe. "You're useless. You'll never give me what I deserve." Heads turned. Conversations paused. The entire table went quiet. I felt my blood pressure spike, but I stayed calm, looking her straight in the eyes, a small smirk playing on my lips, thinking, I've had enough. I didn't yell. I didn't beg. I just grabbed my card, paid my share, and stood up. Walked out. The weight of years of arguments, comparisons, and silent judgment lifted with each step. A few hours later, she showed up at my door, crying, begging to talk, and I realized everything had changed that night. We had been together for almost 3 years. It wasn't the kind of relationship that everyone envied. It wasn't flashy or perfect, but it was serious. We spent weekends together, shared small routines, celebrated birthdays quietly, and sometimes just sat together watching TV. For me, that was enough. I cared about her, and I thought she cared about me. I've always been independent. I don't like being controlled. I don't like being told what to do, and I don't tolerate being looked down on. I work hard, I take care of myself, and I expect the people close to me to respect that. I can be a little cold sometimes, sure, but I also know what I want, and I'm not afraid to say no when it's needed. She, on the other hand, she was different. She liked attention. She cared deeply about how others saw her. Not just friends, but acquaintances, colleagues, even strangers. She wanted admiration and approval, and she could be extremely demanding. Sometimes it was subtle. Small remarks about how other people do it better. Sometimes it was obvious, a criticism meant to highlight my flaws. I loved her, though. I loved her stubbornness, her charm, and even her occasional arrogance. I loved how she could light up a room with her laughter. I loved the way she pushed me to be better, even if it came in the form of criticism. But there was always this underlying tension. She could be impatient, always comparing me to others, making me feel like I was never enough. Her standards were high, sometimes unrealistically so. And her pride. It was huge. She never admitted mistakes, rarely apologized, and expected people to keep up with her expectations. Even in quiet moments at home, in the evenings after work, her personality shone through. She would talk about her day, her friends, her successes, and subtly compare me. "Why don't you do this like so-and-so?" Or, "I saw someone today who, maybe you could learn from them." I know she didn't mean to hurt me, but over time it added up. Despite all that, I loved her. I tried to see the good in her, tried to accept her flaws, and often excused her behavior because I believed in us. I thought the relationship was worth the effort. I learned to navigate her moods, her pride, her little digs, and I accepted that some nights we would just sit in silence while she vented about things that didn't matter. But I also had boundaries. I knew what I could tolerate, and I knew what crossed the line. I wasn't perfect. I could be distant, a little cold, but I was honest and straightforward. I tried to support her, care for her, and give her space when she needed it. But I expected respect in return. That was non-negotiable for me. Evenings were our usual time together. Sometimes we went out, sometimes we stayed in, but the tension was always there, subtle, underlying. Her pride, her need for attention, her insistence on being admired, it hung in the air like a shadow. And I, loving her but independent by nature, felt caught between devotion and self-respect. We had so many small moments that hinted at problems. She would dismiss my suggestions, ignore my feelings, or make small sarcastic comments when I tried to show affection. Yet I stayed, believing that her love for me was real, and that we could make it work if I just understood her better. This tension, this push and pull, defined our relationship. I loved her, yes, but I also knew she was proud and used to being in control. I had to be careful, assertive when necessary, and always aware of where the line was between compromise and losing myself. That Friday evening, we decided to meet at her place after work. The apartment was softly lit, a small group of her friends scattered around, laughing and chatting as I walked in. I smiled politely, greeted everyone, but I could feel the tension immediately. She was standing near the kitchen, arms crossed, scanning me like she was already judging everything I did. "Finally," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "I was starting to think you wouldn't show up on time. Did you get lost or something?" Her friends giggled and I forced a polite chuckle. "Empty-handed again," she said, loud enough for her friends lounging on the couch to hear. I frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" She leaned back in her chair, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "You couldn't even bring something?" "Flowers, a small box of chocolates. Anything. Every guy I know brings gifts when they visit their girlfriend." I glanced around. Her friends were watching, half amused, half uncomfortable. I could feel the judgment in the air, like I'd just broken some unspoken rule of dating. "It's just a hangout," I said, trying to keep my tone calm. "Didn't realize I needed an invitation gift." She laughed, a sharp, mocking sound. "It's called effort. You should try it sometime." My jaw tightened. I wanted to remind her that just last week, I'd stayed up all night helping her finish a project she'd procrastinated on, or that I'd skipped lunch twice that month because I'd covered her coffee and gas when she was short. But I didn't. There was no point. She didn't want gratitude. She wanted an audience. Her best friend Lily tried to defuse it. "Come on, Mia, it's not a big deal." But Mia just rolled her eyes. "It is a big deal. He never thinks. He's just comfortable doing the bare minimum." I forced a small smile. "Noted," I said quietly. She smirked. "I always say that, but you never change." I could feel my patience slipping, but I swallowed it down. I'd learned over the months that she liked pushing me, just to see how much I'd take before snapping. We were supposed to go out with her group that night. Dinner, drinks, a little celebration for one of her friend's promotions. I followed along, still trying to keep the peace. But even on the drive there, she kept throwing small jabs. "Maybe tonight, try not to embarrass me, okay?" she said while fixing her lipstick in the mirror. I turned my head, surprised. "Embarrass you? When have I ever—" "You're too quiet sometimes," she cut in. "You don't mingle. People think you're awkward. Just talk more. Be confident." "I can't always carry the conversation." I laughed dryly. "You seem to handle that pretty well without me." She shot me a look. "See, that's what I mean." That sarcasm. You think it's funny, but it's not attractive. I stared out the window for the rest of the ride, counting the red lights and telling myself it wasn't worth another argument. But deep down, something in me was breaking. When we got to the cafe restaurant, it was already crowded. The place had dim lights, cozy tables, and that Friday night buzz, laughter, music, the smell of coffee, and something sweet in the air. I pulled out her chair out of habit, but she just sat down without even looking at me. Her friends joined, and before long the table was filled with chatter. At first I stayed quiet, sipping my drink and trying to ease into the mood, but Mia, she was in full performance mode. "So yeah," she said loudly, flipping her hair. "I told him if he can't plan a proper date, I'll just plan it myself." Her friends giggled. One of them looked at me awkwardly, but Mia didn't care. She thrived on that attention, that spotlight. I smiled politely, pretending not to notice the sting in her words. Then she leaned toward me, still smiling that fake, sweet smile. "By the way, did you finally get your promotion?" I shook my head. "Not yet. Maybe next quarter." My boss said, "Oh, right," she interrupted. "The job that values your potential." She used air quotes and her friends laughed softly. "You've been saying that for months." I exhaled slowly, forcing a calm tone. "Promotions take time. I'm not rushing it." "Well, maybe you should," she said with a shrug. "Some of us don't want to wait forever for stability." That one hit deeper than I wanted to admit. I set my drink down, staring at her. "What's that supposed to mean?" She leaned back, smirking. "It means I deserve more than excuses." Something in me snapped, not in anger but in clarity. I'd been swallowing this pattern for months. The subtle digs, the comparisons, the way she made me feel small so she could feel big. And now she was doing it again in front of people. "Mia," I said quietly, "if you've got something to say it directly." She looked right at me and smiled. the kind of smile that wasn't kind at all. Then, loud enough for half the cafe to hear, she said, "You're useless. You can't give me what I deserve." The whole table went silent. Even the music felt like it dimmed. My chest tightened, but I didn't flinch. Her friends stared between us, unsure what to say. I just smiled, small, calm, tired. "You're right," I said, pulling out my wallet. "Maybe I can't give you what you deserve." I placed some bills on the table, enough to cover my food and drink, then stood up. She looked confused for the first time that night. "Where are you going?" I met her eyes, voice steady. "I think it's best." And just like that, I walked out. Behind me, I heard one of her friends whisper, "Mia, what the hell?" But I didn't turn around. Out on the street, the night air felt cold, clean, and strangely peaceful. I took a deep breath and smiled for real this time. For the first time in months, I felt free. I was just sitting on the couch half dead after the week I'd had. You know that kind of quiet where you finally stop caring? That's where I was. No music, no phone, no overthinking, just peace. Then out of nowhere, bang, bang, bang. At first I thought it was the neighbors. But then I heard her voice, "Mia, open the door," she screamed. "I know you're in there, don't ignore me." I swear my first instinct was to laugh. It was so typical of her. Dramatic entrance, zero chill. But I didn't move. I just sat there letting her yell. For a good 5 minutes she went off, idly saying how I embarrassed her, how I threw away everything we built, all that crap. I didn't say a word, then it got quiet. Like eerily quiet. Next thing I know, I hear this soft sound, and bro, she's crying. Like full-on sobbing in the hallway. Part of me almost felt bad. But the other part, the tired, burned-out part, that one just wanted peace. So I stayed quiet. And then, this is where it gets wild, and my cousin Emma shows up. She'd texted earlier saying she might drop off the charger she borrowed. So yeah, she knocks. I open the side door and there she is, all casual in her hoodie and shorts, holding a bag of takeout like, "Hey, I brought food. You probably forgot to eat again, huh?" And guess who hears her voice? Mia, bro. I didn't even have time to process before I heard heels clicking toward us. She rounds the corner, mascara running, eyes red. And she just stares. For a full 3 seconds, she doesn't say anything, just looks between me and Emma like she's connecting the dots. Then she lets out this bitter little laugh. "Wow, that was fast," she says. Emma's like, hi?" Totally confused, and Mia, oh man, she goes, "Guess I was right. You really can't stand being alone for a minute, huh?" I tried to explain. "Mia, she's my cousin. She cuts me off." "Save it, I get it. You replaced me in less than a week." Now normally old me would have tried to calm her down, explain, make sure she understood. But that night, I didn't have the energy. So I just said, "Mia, go home." Her whole expression shifted. Anger melted into disbelief, then sadness. "You really don't care, do you?" I shrugged. I cared for a long time. "But I'm done." She looked at me, really looked at me, and whispered, "I thought you'd always stay." I didn't answer. There was nothing left to say. She stood there for a moment, then turned and walked away. No dramatic exit this time, no slammed door. Just silence. Emma was still standing there, holding the bag like she'd walked into a soap opera. Should I? Come back later. I shook my head. "Nah, you're good. Let's eat." We sat down, unpacked the food, and she didn't pry. Just started talking about random stuff, work, family, whatever. And honestly, it felt nice, normal, peaceful. Somewhere in between bites, I looked toward the door and realized she was really gone. No more yelling, no more guilt trips. Just quiet. That's when it hit me. The fight was never about love. It was about control. She couldn't handle that I finally stopped chasing her approval, and the moment she lost that control, she crumbled. I didn't feel revenge. I didn't even feel pity, just relief. You know what's crazy, though? She never texted again. Not once. No sorry, no can we talk, nothing. It's like when she realized she couldn't manipulate me anymore, she just disappeared, and honestly, that silence, that was the real closure. Because sometimes, bro, the most powerful thing you can do isn't shouting or explaining or getting even. It's just not reacting. That's what breaks them. The silence. And that night, when the door finally stayed shut, I knew I'd finally moved on. The next morning, I woke up and realized it was the first time in months that I hadn't checked my phone out of habit. No waiting for a text. No worrying about what kind of mood she'd be in. Just quiet. I made coffee, opened the window, and for the first time in forever, It actually smelled like peace, no fake apologies. No guilt trips. No we need to talk texts, just stillness. And bro, I can't even explain how freeing that was. You know what's funny? Everyone used to say I was lucky to have her. They'd talk about how beautiful she was, how outgoing, how confident. But no one ever saw what came after that confidence. The comparisons, the constant criticism, the way she made me feel like I was always less. Being with her was like walking on eggshells. One wrong move and boom, argument. So yeah, losing her wasn't really losing anything. It was regaining myself. I started doing things I hadn't done in years. Hit the gym again. Caught up with friends, worked late because I wanted to. Not because I needed a distraction. And it's wild how your whole life starts to shift once you stop trying to prove your worth to someone who never really saw it. A few weeks later, I heard through mutual friends that she'd been telling people I'd moved on too fast, that I'd replaced her. And you know what? I didn't even correct them, because the truth didn't matter to her anymore, control did. And once she couldn't control the story, she lost interest. That's when it really hit me. Sometimes people don't miss you. They miss the version of themselves they got to play when you were around. And once you stop letting them play that role, they vanish. Emma laughed when I told her about it later. She's just mad you didn't chase her, she said. Maybe she was right. Because when someone's used to power over you, your peace looks like punishment to them. That realization changed a lot for me. Not just about relationships, but about boundaries in general. I stopped over-explaining myself to people who didn't care to understand. I stopped saying yes when I really meant no. I stopped chasing closure from people who thrived on confusion, and that's when I started to actually live. One night, a few months later, I got a random DM from an old friend of hers. A simple message. She still talks about you sometimes. I didn't reply. Didn't need to. Because I wasn't that guy anymore. The one waiting for her validation. The one who mistook chaos for passion. Now, my peace is non-negotiable. I've learned that sometimes the strongest thing you can do isn't fighting back or getting even. It's walking away. Quietly and meaning it. And trust me, that's silence. That's louder than any argument you'll ever have. So yeah, when I think about her now, I don't feel angry or bitter. Just done. Grateful even, because that whole mess taught me the most valuable lesson of all. If you have to beg someone to respect you, they never will. If someone you loved stood up in front of their friends and called you useless, made you feel like less just to look better in front of others, would you still try to fix it? Or would you do what I did? Walk away, keep your peace, and let time show them what they threw away? Because sometimes the real revenge isn't anger or payback or even moving on with someone else. It's peace. Real, unbothered, quiet peace.